Welcome back, mathematicians. Today we're dealing with squares and cubes, square roots and cube roots, but now we're including variables. This is in chapter 6 on page 84 in your tablet and page 85 in the book. First of all, we must remember to do some revision. Any number to the power of 1 will just be that number. Any number to the power of 0 will be 1. A positive number to an even power will be positive. A positive number to an odd power will also be positive. So we can think of that as a positive number to either an even or odd power will always be positive. A negative number to an even power will be positive. A negative number to an odd power will be negative. You need to go and learn those facts. Let's look at square and cube roots. The inverse operation of squaring is square rooting. Now there was this important fact to remember, that a negative number square rooted is non-real. Let's have a look at an example of square rooting a term that has variables. Well, again, we go back to our signs, numbers, letters, or variables. The square root of a positive number is going to be positive. So our sign is dealt with. Now we go and look at the number. The square root of 16 is 4. Now what we do when square rooting, we divide the powers by 2. So we are going to say that it's going to be x to the 4 divided by 2. And then we're going to say y to the power of 6 divided by 2. So our answer here will be 4 to the x. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Y, 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now if you remember, when we did the ladder method, for example, if you had x to the power of 4, it was x times x times x. So if you had your ladder with 4 x's down the side, what you did, remember if we were square rooting, we grouped these into groups of 2. So that is why you divide the exponent by 2. The inverse operation of cubing is cube rooting. If you remember, the cube root of a negative number is negative. So we can cube root a negative number, but we cannot square root a negative number. Okay, let's look at an example. And remember, again, we're going to do signs, numbers, and letters or variables. So the first thing we're going to do is the cube root of a negative is going to be negative. So our signs are dealt with. The numbers, the cube root of 27 is 3, because 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3 is 27. And then, just like the square rooting, when we cube root, we divide the exponent by the root, i.e. 3. So now here we're going to get p to the power of 9. We are cube rooting, so we divide by 3. Q to the 6, because we cube rooting, we divide by 3. Remember, when we did the ladder method and cube rooted, we grouped our numbers into groups of 3. So this is just a carry on from that. So this will be negative 3 p. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Q, 6 divided by 3 is 2. And that is the answer. Laws of exponents. Let's look what happens when we now have variables. Remember, when I raise a power to a further power, I write down the base and I multiply the exponents. So that will equal a to the mn. Let's look at the next one. A multiplied, so when I have a product raised to a power, each factor must be raised to a further power. So here we're going to write down the base. And remember, we can only do this if we multiply. This is going to be a to the 1. So 1 multiplied by n is n. Multiplied by, write down the base. Multiply exponent. So remember, it was almost distribution from the top. T, 1 multiplied by n is n. So that would equal a to the n multiplied by t to the n. A to the 0, any power to the 0 is 1. Let's have a look. If we have a negative to an even exponent, our result is going to be positive. If we had negative a to an odd exponent, our result is going to be negative. And remember from the previous slide, if we had positive a, whether it's to an even exponent or an odd exponent, the result is always positive. You have to go and learn those laws to apply them when squaring and cubing. Let's look at these examples. So I have a power raised to a further power. Remember the laws. I write down my base and I'm going to say 3 multiplied by 2 equals p to the 6. You don't need to do this step, but that's just my explanation to you. Right, once again we have to deal with the signs, the numbers, and the letters or variables. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the negative raised to an odd power is going to be negative. Then we deal with the numbers. So 2 to the power of 3 means 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2, or 2 to the power of 3. 3 times 1 is 3. When I raise a power to a further power, I write down my base, which is c, and I multiply exponents. 4 multiplied by 3. This is just your thinking. You do not need to write this step out. So negative 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2, or 2 cubed is 8. C, 4 multiplied by 3 is 12. You can go directly from that step to this step. Let's look at the following example. This is a little bit more complex, and remember the laws of BEDMAS. We've replaced the O with an E for exponents. So the first thing I look at is the brackets. If I see inside the bracket I have two terms, this is b to the 5, b to the 5, so I have like terms. So I'm going to simplify that first. So I copy down negative 3. I'm subtracting like terms, so I write down the family name, which is b to the 5. I then say 4 minus 2 is 2, close my bracket, and that is cubed. So I'm finished with the bracket. Now I'm going to deal with the exponent, which applies to this part of my calculation. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll copy down my negative 3. When I raise a power to a further power, remember 2 is the same as 2 to 1 to the power of 1. I multiply exponents. So I'm going to say 2, 1 multiplied by 3 is 3. I write down my base and I multiply exponents. 3 times 5 is 15. B to the 15. Close my bracket. I'm first going to simplify that. So I have negative 3. 2 cubed is 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2, which is 8. B to the 15. Right, remember, there's an invisible multiplication sign there, or we can see it as distribution to one term. So again, I'm going to deal with my signs, then my numbers, then my variables or the letters. So we will have a negative multiplied by a positive is negative. The numbers, 3 times 8 is 24, and I have B to the 15. Let's look at the next example. I'm square rooting. The first thing I check is that it's positive, and again I'm going to deal with the signs, numbers and letters. So the square root of 16 is 4. Remember, when I square root, I write down the base and I'm going to say 6 divided by 2 because it's square rooting, and that's going to be 4. See, 6 divided by 2 is 3. You can go straight from this to the answer like that. This is just to explain how it works. Let's do the test your understanding. Right, this bracket is being squared. So the first thing, remember, signs, numbers, variables, or letters. These two mean the same thing. So that's why I've joined them. So we're going to say a negative to an even power is positive. You see how you have to know your laws of exponents. I'm going to say 4. When I raise a power to a further power, remember that's 4 to the power of 1. So we are going to say 1 multiplied by 2 is 2. M, 2 multiplied by 2 is 4. N, 3 multiplied by 2 is 6. Now I simplify. I don't need my positive. 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. M to the power of 4, N to the power of 6. This one's a little bit more complicated because you can see I have two places where we have exponents. How many terms are in this expression? Well, it's 1 because they are actually multiplied together. But I can simplify each of these factors. These are called factors in the term. So again, I always go signs, numbers, variables, or letters. 3 to the power of 1, so I'm going to write down my base and I say 1 multiplied by 2 is 2. I write down my base. 2 multiplied by 4 is 8. I haven't simplified that, so I'm keeping it in a bracket. A negative raised to an odd power is negative. 3 is an odd number. Remember, this is 2 to the power of 1, so I'm raising a power to a further power. 1 multiplied by 3 is 3. Write down my base, which is B. 3 multiplied by 3 is 9. Now I simplify the number part here. 3 squared is 9. B to the 8 multiplied by negative 8b to the 9. Remember, we have a multiplication sign between these two brackets, so again I'm going to deal with the signs first. A positive multiplied by a negative is negative. Now I deal with the numbers. 9 eighths are 72. Multiplying, I'm now multiplying powers with the same base. I write down the base and I add exponents. 9 and 8 is 17. That is the answer. Let's look at this one. So when we cube root, we deal again. We look at the signs, numbers, letters, or variables. Right, so here we have the cube root of 64 is 4. Another fact that you must know. When I cube root variables, I write down the variable and I divide each of the exponents by 3 because I'm grouping in groups of 3. Y cubed over 3. That will equal 4x 12 divided by 3 is 4. Y 3 divided by 3 is 1. Or I can just write 4x to the 4y. That's all for this exercise. Please will you go and do exercise 6.6. Thank you.